You're finally getting brand deals and doing that content creator thing.
This sounds like a new opportunity.
But now you're drowning in emails, you're not really sure what to charge or how to negotiate, and there's that little voice in the back of your head that says, maybe it's time for a manager. I'm right there with you. So I interviewed two different creators, Brett Shuford and Angela Arena, about their experience working with talent managers, as well as three managers themselves. Brittany Brown, an influencer talent manager, Josh Levine, a former podcast talent manager, and Eva Wolf, a manager on the brand side of things. After this video, you'll be able to answer, do I need a manager? How do I hire one? And what should I look out for? Because spoiler alert, not every manager is a good one. Influencer manager, talent manager, creator manager, whatever you want to call it, what do they actually do? Well, they can do all sorts of things, like pitch new brand deals for you, answer any inbound deals you get, negotiate rates and deliverables, review contracts, follow up with brands that ghost you, find long-term partnerships, and of course, help you make more money with less headache. Think of them kind of like the person who's between you and the brand. But it's important to note that not every manager provides the same services. So for example, some managers help with content strategy, while others don't.
You know, there are some managers, like our manager, one thing I probably would want to tweak, if anything, is I wish she was a little bit more strategy involved. I know there are a lot of managers who do give a little bit more strategy, or say like, hey, I noticed your stories are this or that. What if you do this? And like here's a 30-day idea that we could come up with for a calendar or something. She's not like that at all. But I also like that because we get to be in charge of our brand.
One of the biggest things we work on, like I think it's kind of three components. One is like content strategy that aligns with your brand deal strategy. So making sure that like if you want to work with travel brands, for example, that you are posting content in your feed that is strategic and is going to get brands' attention that we can either use in pitching, or that brands are going to just come to you because you're creating the content that they want to see.
It's important to ask the right questions before hiring. This way you know exactly what you're signing up for. And don't worry, I know it's going to be a lot, so I'll give you a full checklist towards the end. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, this all sounds really great. Sign me up. Slow down. I want to make sure that you are fully prepared before you jump in. So to get the full picture, I asked Angela and Brett what made them decide to actually hire a manager.
So obviously I get inbound requests, but I also am definitely big on like sliding into the DMs of my dream brands. And so I'd get all these contacts and I was like, okay, I have 300 contacts now. But now I actually have to send them an email. And that's kind of where I kind of hit a wall, where I was like, okay, if I could give this list to somebody and have them just like mass send it out, it would change the game.
I had been doing a lot of pitching on my own, but there's so much follow-up that needs to happen, and there's so much organization that needs to happen. And then we had a baby, and I also have a coaching business, and we're, traveling, and we're working as actors. So it just became a thing where it's like, we need to double our time. So hiring a manager just felt like the next step. And it felt like 20% or whatever that manager would ask for would be worth it in regards to us saving that time.
So there's a common problem here, time. Both creators struggle to actually find the time to answer their messages, answer their emails, follow up with brands, pitch to new brands, etc. But time isn't the only reason.
I think it comes down to recognizing your own capabilities. What are you good at? What do you like to do? Why are you creating? What makes you tick? If having relationships with brands and negotiating on your own content and trying to make $2,000 on a post instead of $1,000 makes you feel icky, probably the right time to find a manager. If you really like that, if that's something that you feel confident in, that you feel is rewarding for you, why go hire a manager when you can do it for yourself? So ultimately it comes down to, what do you like to do? How much bandwidth do you have to actually do it? And do you feel like you're the right person to do it?
So I felt like we were leaving money on the table. A lot of it was stuff that was coming in to us, and I was just so excited that brands were wanting to work with us that I was like, yes. And then we would find ourselves like burning the candle at both ends, trying to make content in exchange for products, and our audience really engaging and going, we should be getting paid for this. And that's when I started to realize, like, I am not going to ask what I'm worth, which is just like, I think that's a challenge a lot of us have as creators. I was surprised once we brought on a manager, how much I've been making the whole time.
Okay, let's break this down nice and slow. The number one issue seems to be the amount of time it takes to answer emails and to pitch to brands. Then pricing. Think undercharging, struggling to negotiate, all that jazz. Organization or missing deadlines is another big one, and not actually enjoying certain tasks that you have to do. So if you ask me, I would say that all of these together are a very strong indicator that it's probably a good time to hire a manager. But of course there's a catch, because even if you struggle with everything on this list, you might not be a good fit for them, because they have requirements too. This week, I submitted an application to a talent agency just to see if I had what it takes to make their roster. And I was rejected. It's okay, no hard feelings, it's fine. This specific agency required a minimum of 100K followers and $120,000 in the past year from brand deals, both of which I did not have. So that agency did not work out for me, but the good news is that every manager has different requirements. What I found interesting though is that it's not usually about your follower count at all.
Do you have any specific requirements that you require of a creator that wants to be a part of your agency?
Not so much follower requirements as it is like kind of busyness. And we try to do about $5,000 to $10,000 per month is like a target for like what you're currently making, so that we have an understanding of like projections for what the agency can make, what our time investment looks like versus your time investment. Oftentimes, if a creator is under that, then they may or may not be ready for management. And sometimes it's a matter of like, you're not charging enough. So that's oftentimes where I like to have like interviews with people to really understand, okay, are you making $3,000 a month because you're not charging enough? Or are you making $3,000 a month on average because you just aren't as busy? The type of brands that are reaching out is important as well. Like, are they aligned, or are they just like, you're getting like 10 inbounds, but none of them are like really viable opportunities? So that's another thing that we look at is like what kind of opportunities are currently in your inbox. And that also helps for us to gauge brand interest to make sure that, it's something that we can help you grow your business in.
I know creators who have 10,000 followers who have a manager, and I know creators who have 1 million followers who still don't have a manager. So I think it's all based on how often you're working with brands and how much money you're making from those. Because like I said, they just want to make a profit off of you. Even though they do wonderful work, at the end of the day, it's kind of all about money for everybody involved.
Speaking of money, this is the perfect segue into our next section. How much will a manager cost you?
20%.
20%.
20% is industry standard.
20% was the number one answer when I asked what managers charge per brand deal. So what that means is that for every deal that you sign, your manager will take a 20% cut. Listen, that might feel like a lot, but considering the fact that your manager's job is literally to get you better deals, higher paying deals, and more deals, I would say it's a pretty fair price.
I think anything more, you're probably respectfully being ripped off a little bit. And anything less, they're probably not going to perform. I know other creators who've worked with like you pay a flat fee and then it's like 10% commission, and a lot of them still felt like they weren't really getting any work.
While we're talking about payment, it's important to remember that brands will typically pay you on a net 30, net 60, or net 90, meaning that you won't get paid until 30, 60, or even 90 days after your partnership ends. And for Brett, negotiating these payment terms is something that his manager helps him with as well.
One of the things I think most people should understand is it's really hard to change the net delivery on the payments. I feel like that was something that really shocked me. Super frustrating to like make something and spend all this time and then have to wait 30, 60, or 90 days to get paid. But I know having that manager on my side, she's fighting for that for us. Like she knows, like we have to feed our child and we have to put food on the table.
We love to see a manager fighting for their clients. Yes. Okay, I gotta be honest, this is a topic that I didn't really know much about at all, and it's also kind of divided between the creators and managers that I talked to, so buckle up. Exclusivity with your manager. Let me break it down. When you sign exclusively with a manager, they will take a percentage of every single brand deal. So whether it's a deal that they pitched, that you pitched, or that was an inbound, they're gonna take their 20% of every deal. There are definitely pros and cons to this, so let's hear the pros first.
I really like investing in a creator's like entire business vision and goals. And so for me, I ask for exclusivity because I want us to be on the same page of working together in terms of like, I know that if we're pitching somebody, we're pitching them together, and you're not pitching them on your own. You're not having another manager pitch you, and we're not trying to compete for business or like, okay, who's going to get this deal? Is it this other manager? Was it me? Like, and there's just like more of a cohesive strategy that we have in place together. And we're working towards this like mutual goal versus, you know, you might be a little siloed here if you're doing some things on your own and you're doing something with another manager.
So it does make sense that when you have an exclusive relationship, a manager might be more invested in your entire creator business as a whole, rather than just being invested in the few brands that they're talking to. But let's hear the other side of this argument.
I think it's nice to not be exclusive. I do think unless they're telling you they're going to get you millions and millions of dollars, I would veer away from that. There are some of these agencies, again, the larger ones that have come to us and said, we want to be exclusive. And that makes me uncomfortable because if I pitch to a brand and do it all on my own, negotiate myself, like there's no reason for me to pay commission. And if someone else comes to me, like let's say a TV show or commercial or something, I'm not going to want to be committed to my social media manager, who's really just there to negotiate brand deals. That's going to go to my talent manager, or I'm going to negotiate that myself, and I don't want to pay commission on that.
So it really just depends on your values. If the idea of your manager taking a percentage of everything makes you feel uncomfortable, then you probably want to look for a non-exclusive agreement. Otherwise, if you don't really care, exclusive is probably fine for you. Do whatever's best for you. So how do you find the one? Okay, I want you to go grab a pen and come back because you're gonna wanna write this down. I'll wait, don't worry. Ready? Okay, cool. Ask other creators for referrals. This is one of the easiest and best ways to find somebody that you can actually trust. You can search for influencer managers on Instagram, TikTok, Google. Obviously, just do your due diligence of searching them up. Make sure that they're reliable, not sketchy. Look at their current roster. Are they working with creators that are in a similar niche as you, or at least like a similar vibe? If not, then maybe they're not the best fit for you. DM their talent for honest feedback. Listen, I think we're all here to kind of help each other. At least I hope so. So there's no harm in DMing one of their creators and just asking like, hey, what is it like working with them? Do you like them? Etc. And then read your contract. Please, please, please read your contract. If you're not good at reading contracts, maybe you have a cousin in law school who can help you. I don't care, but you need to have someone who is reading your contracts. All right, I think this was a pretty good list, but let's hear what the others have to say.
I would really evaluate for emotional intelligence. I think it's really critical to find someone that you believe is representing your best interest. I think it's also critical to find people that are ambitious. If you don't feel like you're working with someone that is ambitious, if you don't feel like you're working with someone that has strong emotional intelligence that you think is working on your behalf, there's nothing wrong with saying this person is not for me.
Don't be afraid to slide in the DMs of their roster, because I've done that. And I will say most contracts state you can't explicitly say something bad about their company, which is fine. But you can tell when you slide into someone's DMs if they're like, oh my God, it's great. These are all the things that they've done for me versus like, oh, they were fine. You can tell when someone's trying to not say something bad.
Always look for transparency and trust. It's very important. If you really want a manager, you have to know the difference between agent and manager because it's two different things.
This leads me into my next section. What's the difference between hiring a big talent agency versus a smaller or maybe freelance manager? Well, hiring a larger agency does have its perks. They often have access to bigger opportunities and established relationships with larger brands. They may offer more full-service support, like having a lawyer on staff or a strategist. It can also make you feel like you have more credibility if you're signed with a larger agency. But you may get less personalized attention considering that you're one of dozens or maybe even hundreds of clients in their roster. Your contract might also be a little stricter, meaning that you probably can't personalize your services as much, or you may be locked in for a longer term contract. Now, with a freelance manager or just a smaller boutique agency, you'll probably get a little more personalized support, like maybe one-on-one calls, and just someone who's dedicated to you. They're often able to be a little more flexible, like taking on different roles over time or helping out in other aspects of your career. You can probably also get on their roster with a little bit of a smaller follower requirement or smaller annual income requirement. They might also take a lower rate, although to be honest, 20% is pretty much standard at this point. But it's also important to note that they might have a more limited network, so they probably don't have as many brand relationships, or if they do, they might not be as big of brands. They also might not have as many resources on staff, although good brand managers probably have certain people like lawyers or strategists on hand that they can refer you to. And of course, it might not be as easy to learn about a manager if they are smaller. So, just do your research, maybe reach out to their talent, all the things that I already talked about.
So we ended up going with a smaller solo manager. We're still working with her. And I think that part of it is it's nice to have that one-on-one interaction. We've been, I don't want to say poached, but maybe that's the right word, poached by different larger agencies. And when they come to us, it feels so impersonal. And while I think they might have relationships with bigger brands, I don't want to get lost. I think that's really the big thing I kept noticing, especially as an actor, like I was saying, in the big agencies, if you're a small actor, you get lost. They're too busy focusing on their Emmy nominees, and the people with millions of followers on social media are going to get more attention from the management team than someone like us who has a good sized audience, but it's not in the millions.
I can't speak from the agency perspective because I've only been a solo manager. I think that there are definitely opportunities for agencies to represent brands successfully. You are going to be a number. That's the reality of the world, is you're not going to be a top priority. No matter how much they sell you in on, you're not going to be a top priority for that agency. They're going to say, you're the best, you're gonna do all these amazing things, we're here for you, which they very well might be. But if you can build a relationship with a person that you really believe in, I really do think that it is going to work out in your best interest. Rory McIlroy, who just won the Masters, his caddy is his childhood best friend, and he's been his caddy forever. And that to me is so much more rewarding than finding someone who's been in the system that can help them. And to each their own, there's successful parts of both, but if you find someone that you believe in, I always recommend finding a individual rather than a collective.
You have to think it's like a model. As a girl, you want to be a model and do fashion show. You will have an agent, you will be in this book with all these people, and the guy will go and say, okay, which girl do you want? And so versus she have a manager, it will be a different vibe. So I'm not saying it's not good, it just depends what you want. Do you want just to be in this book and just make some money and you're good at that because you don't have to manage anything? Or do you want to have a manager who manage something because you want to, create your brand at some point or do something bigger than just being a content creator?
I think it kind of depends on what your overall goals are and the relationship that you want to have with your manager. With solo managers or like more boutique agencies, you get a little bit more of that like one-on-one time and attention from your manager. And then in a bigger agency, I know that there's just like, sometimes they have a bigger roster and they have a lot of people helping them, like with, you know, if they have like a talent coordinator or they have like campaign managers or different people, so that they aren't always working with that, you know, their quote unquote manager. They're working with like the entire team. I know that all bigger agencies have very different structures. So I think those are great questions to ask and not assume that like, okay, you're a really big agency, you're automatically going to work this way. I think it's just good to have the understanding of like, they could have this other structure. And it's great to ask those questions of like, how much time do I get to spend with you? Like, how do we communicate? How can I contact you? Like, what are your kind of like hours and what are your boundaries around those things? Because sometimes they might not have the time or capacity. And so it's good to kind of go into those things up front and kind of feel good about what you're getting into.
Watch out, because there can definitely be a few red flags when you're hiring a manager. For example, if they're saying yes to every single brand deal that comes in, they're probably not in it for you. They're in it for the money. If they're not communicating enough with you, they're probably not the best fit. If you don't have any access to read any of your emails, I'd say that's a red flag. If they're making empty promises about brands that they're connected to or people that they know, that's kind of sketchy. If you're working with a manager that charges a flat fee or like a upfront fee instead of commission, it's not always a red flag, but I probably would not recommend that. And of course, if you're not seeing the type of results that you want to see, it's time to move on.
When looking for a manager, I would definitely go for somebody who works strictly on a commission basis. My first manager that I hired, they weren't working on commission. They were reaching out to a lot of brands, but most of the brands they were reaching out to were very like in beginning stages, kind of startup brands. And so they strictly wanted free product. But when you don't have somebody who has skin in the game as far as money, they don't necessarily care. And so any brand deal is a good brand deal in their eyes.
Any sort of guarantees of brands that you're going to be able to work with, any sort of guarantees in sales. If they say, I can get you to work with Lululemon within 6 months, like it's going to be a big red flag for them to guarantee because there's no such thing as a guarantee.
After watching this far, I'm just curious, if you feel ready to hire a manager by this point, drop a purple heart in the comments. And if you're like, I'm not so sure, I'm still like a little hesitant, drop a yellow heart. I feel like it would be kind of fun. And as promised, I do have a checklist for you with everything that you should ask or find out before you hire a manager. I'm gonna put it up on the screen, so make sure to take a screenshot now. Make sure that you're actually reviewing this checklist during the hiring process. This way you are 100% sure that you're making an informed decision. I really, really love what Angela said about the second manager that she hired.
Most of these large management teams, you can just apply online, just like you would any job. You know, actually a big green flag for me for them was we had our first initial intro call and they said, you know, we want some time to think about it. We're going to chat with our team and see if everybody's on board. And then about a week later, they offered me a spot on their roster. The first one that I reached out to, it was like they were very much so, they wanted to just sign people. Whereas this was like, it felt very intentional.
Trust your gut and know that if something does not feel right, it's probably not right. And keep in mind that it's a really, really good idea to interview more than one manager or agency.
If you're thinking of hiring a manager, I would definitely interview a bunch. Don't just meet one person and agree to working with them. Also consider doing some sort of trial. Let's see how this goes, almost like a freelance thing. And if they refuse to do that, then I would honestly not consider working with them, because I don't think it's fair to lock you in if the relationship isn't going to work past 90 days.
I think building your business and like being a team together and like figuring out who you want on your team is so important. And it's okay for it to take a little bit more time, and don't rush the process. Anybody who feels like really pushy, I think take a step back and, it's okay if it doesn't feel right.
Okay, now let's skip ahead for a sec. You hired a manager, woohoo! Woo! Go you! I would highly suggest that after a few months, you evaluate the relationship. I really think Brittany summed this up perfectly.
I think there's some very obvious things in a 2 to 3 month time period that you should look for. One, I think communication style, making sure your communication styles align, that you're hearing from your manager like a few times a week at least, that you are able to access them if you need them, that you are able to do the calls that you need to do. Like, for example, like I like to do my strategy calls with creators. I know sometimes schedules are not always like as flexible, but I think at least getting 1 to 2 like strategy calls with your manager in the first 1 to 3 months is really helpful. Being able to see like kind of response times within like 24 to 48 hours from inbounds or, you know, brands that are in your inbox and you're communicating with them. And depending on whatever your expectations are that you set together, making sure they're following through on those things.
And don't forget that if the partnership just isn't working out, it's okay to tell them or just to leave them altogether.
If you're questioning whether or not they're really working for you, like you need to be able to have real honest conversations with them and say to them, hey, I'm having doubts. I haven't gotten a partnership in 30 days or 60 days or whatever. You want to treat it professional, even though sometimes it can feel very personal. And so having ways to measure whether or not the partnership is working is super important. I think people forget, like when you are creating content, because it's so creative and fun, that the business part of it requires measurement. How do you track things? And your manager should be able to do that. They should be able to say to you, I noticed your insights have done this, or we've had this many pitches and we've gotten this many partnerships out of it. And you can start to measure things. That's a business. So if nothing's being measured, I would question whether or not you're actually running a business. Really give them a chance to have a conversation and set some boundaries around it before you decide to move on.
To finish out this video, I want you to hear some advice that I asked each of the creators and managers that you met today. Remember that they're the experts here. I'm just the one gathering all the information in one spot. So make sure to listen carefully.
Everybody says this, and I wish that it wasn't true, but you have to be getting content out consistently, and one, for your numbers and for the algorithm and all of that good stuff, but also that's really something that management teams are looking for. When I was hunting for a manager, there was a period of time where I didn't post for 1 week, and somebody that I was in contact with about a contract, they were like, okay, but why haven't you put something up in a week? Like, they were like, when companies land on your page, like they need to know that you're being consistent. And so, you know, I don't necessarily think it's important to niche down or like do any of these things, but you have to be posting consistently.
Be careful everything you sign too. Read it 2 times. If you're not sure, just ask advice, because big corporate, they know what they're doing. And you're a little content creator coming in like a little butterfly in this world, and you're like, not everything pink, you know? So just be careful. I'm not saying it will be like a catfish or something, but looking at contract and all lines before signing something, especially when it's a big contract.
The thing that I really have noticed is a lot of creators will take on partnerships as a checkbox and will deliver things that they're not confident in, that they really don't believe in. As a manager, it's my duty to make sure that any product a creator is endorsing, not only do they really believe in, but they would stand by. People don't feel a responsibility to speak for brands when they get paid for it. They feel as though it's out of their hands. They feel as though the manager did the due diligence, or the agency did, or the brand itself. But time and time again, we see bad partnerships come into play because the money is too good. The biggest influencer in football is Tom Brady, and he endorsed FTX, which is a crypto exchange, which is now defunct, and their founder is now in jail. These are influencer partnerships, essentially. They're celebrity endorsements. And while he might have really been a big proponent of the industry, I would bet that he didn't do enough due diligence into the research of the brand itself, but the money was too good. So I would say the biggest thing is, if you are a creator and the money seems too good, do your due diligence, making sure you're researching and believing in it for things outside of just the dollars and cents.
I think if you are looking to just increase your rates as like, that's kind of the only thing you want to do, I would figure out how to do that on your own, because you might not get as much out of a manager if you're only looking to increase your rates. You're ultimately investing part of your income into a manager. And so what is the investment that you're getting, and does it make sense for your business? So do you want more time back from, not having to be in your inbox all the time? Do you want more help with bigger, broader goals? Do you want help with content strategy? Do you want access to new opportunities? Like, those are kind of like the full package of management. And I think if you're looking purely just to increase your income, try investing in like a coach or a course or something that's going to help you do that. Then you'll kind of realize, okay, I actually didn't want a manager. I just wanted to increase my rates. And then maybe after you increase your rates and you're getting busier and everything, then you want to, invest in a manager.
It's not like a miracle thing. Like you hire a manager and all of a sudden brand deals start coming in. There is still this part of you that has to do the pitching, do the reaching out, communicate what you're looking for, what you want to create content for. She's not just gonna be sitting around like doing all this work and I get to sit back and relax and wait. I need to be checking in with her too and be like, how's this going? What do we think about this brand? By the way, I sent 10 emails this week to these 10 brands if you want to follow up or DM them. It's a team. You have to have a team.
So, should you hire a manager? Only you can answer that. But if you could relate to a lot of things in this video, then it's probably time. And let me know in the comments, are you considering management after watching this video? Remember to drop your purple heart if the answer is yes, and your yellow heart if you're still kind of unsure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow all of our incredible guests today because they were absolutely amazing, and I really hope that you learned so much from them. Thank you again to Brett, Angela, Brittany, Ava, and Josh for being a part of this video. All their handles are linked in the description. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!